Welcome to Chamber Chat. My name is Dawn Hjelseth. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communication at River City Company. We appreciate you joining us today for a conversation regarding safety tips for local businesses. And so with us today, we have Officer Watson. And would you take a moment and just give us a little bit of background of who you are?
Yes, thank you, Don. I'm Officer Brandon Watson. I'm a Chattanooga Police Department's first and currently only full-time crisis intervention officer. I helped start Chattanooga's first crisis co-responder unit, and I've also started our standalone crisis intervention training for CPD officers. I've been on the department for 4 years. Prior to that, I've worked at Volkswagen. I've been in Chattanooga about 10 years, and I also wrote regularly for a little paper called the Chattanooga Pulse for several years. I was real proud of that. I was a regular columnist, and I wrote on history of Chattanooga Police Department and veterans issues when I get cover stories. And also got to do seasonal mixed cocktail reviews of the businesses in Chattanooga. So it was a real fun time writing for that paper.
That's great. Can you describe to everyone, what is the crisis response team?
So a crisis response team is a very specialized group that pairs a crisis intervention trained officer, which is a CIT officer, with a licensed clinical social worker. And they also are state certified to diagnose and refer folks that are experiencing a crisis due to substance abuse or mental health issues. CIT officers are trained for de-escalation, communication, and identifying behaviors that would lead an officer to believe that someone would need help medically or referrals to other mental health resources in the community.
Great. And so really this conversation, I believe, came up between us that when we were talking about this chamber chat, that really across America, cities have changed after the pandemic, and Chattanooga's changed, and we're a growing city. And so there were times in Chattanooga during the pandemic where a lot of people were working from home. Now they've shifted back to working in the workplace, coming back downtown for events and for shopping and for restaurants and attractions. And so while a growing city, good things happen, but there also come challenges. And so we heard from local businesses that they were seeking some information about things that they could do with their employees regarding safety and some tips. And so I think to start, it would be really helpful, because it was really eye-opening to me in our conversation what is a crime and what's not a crime in Tennessee. And things have changed over the past couple of years too with that. And so can you just tell us a little bit about some of those laws that people may think is a crime, but actually it might not be?
Yes, Don. So a lot of the things, and this is from experience working the streets and taking some of these calls, some business owners and even citizens seem to think that holding a cardboard sign on a sidewalk is a crime, and is not. That is protected First Amendment speech. In Chattanooga's Code of Ordinances, this is 25-39, it actually specifically designates what is passive panhandling and what is aggressive panhandling. All right, passive panhandling is not a crime. That is protected First Amendment speech. Aggressive panhandling is a very distinct law, and it actually has a TCA, which is Tennessee Code Annotated 3917.313, which describes what aggressive panhandling is. So aggressive panhandling is anybody that touches a citizen in trying to get money or solicit donations, anybody that follows the citizen trying to seek donations or money, yelling or screaming profanities. Basically, it's a mix of disorderly conduct with the hope of coercing something free. Okay, that's aggressive panhandling, and that is illegal. That is a crime. Where passive panhandling may become a crime is if they're blocking entranceways or disrupting the flow of normal traffic. the organizations that set up religious pamphlets and information pieces, you see them all over the city. They are passively panhandling, and that is protected First Amendments. They're not bothering anybody, they're not disrupting the flow of traffic, and that is protected. And that's no different than any citizen that's seeking money for food or work or anything else like that. Where it becomes a crime, according to the city ordinance 2539, is if they're panhandling on on-ramps or off-ramps in streets zoned 35 miles per hour and over, or on medians that are narrower than 8 feet, okay, because it's a safety concern with the flow of traffic. That also means they can't panhandle in the street or on a highway. So I'll see, some that try to get donations, they'll walk into traffic, sometimes it's on Brainerd Road, and where we have to stop and engage them on that. And these are all misdemeanors. These are Class C misdemeanors, unless they're doing it repeatedly. And then it upgrades from there.
Yeah.
So.
I think we talked a little bit too about loitering or sleeping in public spaces, because sometimes we see that as well. And so can you tell us a little bit about what the definition of what would be a crime and not a crime in those circumstances?
Yes, so there's no law for loitering. That was repealed in 2019. There's no crime for actually loitering. There's criminal trespass. It was all rolled in to the criminal trespass TCA, okay? And that one basically says anybody that's in or on private property without the consent of the owner is a violation of criminal trespass. And that's where that comes from. Now, loitering, when it comes to, and this is taken out of the criminal trespass TCA, when you have a business that has assumed public access, meaning you're open for business, that's like a store, a convenience store, the public is free to go and come and go as they please to the patron of the business. So anybody can have free access to there, but it's up to the owner and the person who controls the property, the manager, staff. They determine who they're going to tender business to. So you have the right to refuse business to anybody. If someone goes in there and is being disorderly, disrupting the function of the business or the operation, the owner can trespass them to have them criminally removed, regardless of if they've already bought something there, if they're a previous employee. If they're doing something to disrupt the business or make the employees feel unsafe or make the business owner or property owner feel unsafe, then they have the right to have them removed from the property. We see this with hotels with innkeepers' rights. When they violated the terms of the contract for the hotels, the innkeeper can remove or revoke the stay at any time at their discretion in the state of Tennessee. And then they can worry about the cost or the payback or whatever. But that's a criminal trespass. Now the stipulation is if a business owner has somebody sleeping in their doorway, they're blocking a doorway, which is also covered in city ordinance, can't block a doorway, and they're trespassing. They're not lawfully there at the consent of the owner or whoever's running the property. They can have them criminally trespassed. A lot of the calls that we get are, there's somebody sleeping here, we just want them to move along. That doesn't entail a criminal trespass. We can't charge them with criminal trespass because if they willingly leave the property, that's defense from prosecution, okay? Also, doesn't mean that we necessarily need to get their information to give them a formal trespass order, unless the property owner wants to prosecute. And I highly recommend that if you wanted an individual or somebody trespass from your business or private property, to say you want them criminally trespassed, so the next time they come back to offend, if they do, then they were formally trespassed, their information was given, and a report was generated. We would write the report, and if they offend again, then we can take lawful action.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this when we met beforehand, that is kind of a common call that you receive from local businesses, that somebody maybe comes in and is unhappy with a service. We're in the holiday season, so sometimes people can get unhappy with service, or they're causing a disturbance inside of a business. And so you spoke a little bit about the trespass. So tell me a little bit more for business owners. What can they tell their staff? How should a staff member handle? So say you have someone walk in and they're being disruptive or they're not happy with their service. What should be some of the first steps that you would do to talk to that person?
So, I learned customer service pretty quick after the Marine Corps. I was a veteran for 12 years and worked at PetSmart as my first job after service. I learned customer service real quick. The tone sets the pace. And also as a crisis officer, even a police officer, the tone of that interaction sets the pace of how the outcome is gonna be. Matching or elevating above somebody who's already escalated or agitated it never ends well for anybody. So try to keep calm, keep a reasonable tone. That's part of to me, it's customer service 101. Like, be polite and professional at all times, even when they're in the wrong, right? So try not to escalate yourself. Know that if they're not leaving and they're causing a disorder and they're disrupting the flow and then they're agitating the other patrons or the customers, that's probably a good time to call law enforcement to let us handle the situation. Because officer presence, sometimes they'll leave when they know the police are on the way. And sometimes they'll stand their ground, allow the police to handle that business, okay? It's safer that way. Yeah. But never engage, try not to get into an argument. It's just, it's try to keep calm, cool, and collected. We got to do the same thing in my line of work on a daily basis.
Yeah. When we were talking before too, you mentioned when someone calls the police for assistance, what should be some of those things that they say on that phone call? How can they describe the situation? Because you said sometimes one officer gets sent, but if it was described differently, maybe a different type of officer would have been sent.
So Don, in Chattanooga, we have the privilege of having some really fine city officers that are crisis intervention trained. We are trained to de-escalate people. That is our number one tenet of our training is, empathetic approaches to de-escalating somebody to a more regulated, reasonable state. Things that you could convey to the dispatcher. Especially if there's an assumption that there's a mental health or substance abuse thing at play, is to try to articulate those things on the front end, because that will shape what officer kind of will be required to come out there, like a CIT officer. So things like if the person who's agitated or is offending or needs to be trespassed is inappropriately dressed for the season, that's a big indicator that there may be a substance or mental issue there. So if it's 20 degrees outside and they're wearing a tank top and shorts, that's a good thing to describe to the dispatcher on the other end of the phone. Hey, they're not appropriately dressed for the season, or if they're wearing a big thick winter coat and it's 100 degrees outside with 1,000% humidity, that might be also an indicator. Things such as fidgeting, these are things to describe. You don't have to have a degree in identifying people on the spectrum, but things like that could cue an officer in that's going to respond like, hey, they're fidgeting with their hands, they're constantly playing with something. These are good descriptors to kind of know what kind of response we're going to have. Also, get a good description. If they escalate to a certain point and then leave, sometimes we don't have a really good description of height, weight, what they're wearing, those basic descriptors. So if something does happen before police get there, we can have somebody to look for and take care of what we need to take care of.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier about prosecuting, and so if you're having someone come to your business on a multiple occasion, talk a little bit about what it looks like, and we discussed it does take time to do this, but it really is something that can help resolve the issue, correct?
That's correct. So since we've kind of worked the trespassing issue. I mean, during, post-COVID, we had a high number of individuals sleeping in front of storefronts and on private property and public property. And they changed the laws on that to where it became criminal to camp on public land. That's not zoned for camping. And so we've had to take trespassing laws and enforce them a lot more frequently now, where it becomes the due diligence of the property owner or the agency controlling the property. Sometimes it's with a third-party management. Not having them want to prosecute the offender of criminal trespass actually doesn't help. It doesn't stop the reoccurring trespassing, because yes, we could probably make the arrest then. If there's nobody to show up to court on the back end for the actual criminal charges, then no crime committed. There's no victim, no crime, right? And I hate to say it that way, but who did they offend against? So it's always a question that's asked more regularly now, like, hey, do you want to press charges? We'll move them along if they're disorderly. But when it comes to criminal liability, essentially it's the owner saying, hey, this person's been disruptive, I've asked this person to leave, and they need to speak to that to the judge, to the courts. It is part of that responsibility. Law enforcement and the officer making the arrest really do not advocate for the business. We see there's a crime that is committed, we have probable cause, we make the arrest, or we do the ticket, the cite in lieu, for whatever violation they did, and we can articulate why we did what we did. But unless the owner or the property management is there to represent the interests of the company or the business, saying, yeah, this person should not be back, they're nothing but a problem, or they cause problems where they're here, and then they can facilitate that. And we're seeing a lot more reduction on criminal trespass from the property owners that do get engaged with the court systems on their own interest to ensure that it doesn't occur again.
Mm-hmm. So one of the other things we heard from some local businesses is sometimes they have an individual come in and ask for assistance or something free to help them. And so if someone comes into the business and asks for assistance, what should be a first step for an employee?
So I'd like to advise that, firm boundaries are paramount, okay? Sometimes people want to use a phone or something like that, and you don't really know who that individual is or who they're going to call. Maybe they might steal the phone because everybody's got cell phones now. Sometimes, and we've had individuals do this, they use the business phone to call the FBI because this person has experiencing extreme mental illness, and then it becomes a problem. So I would say, hey, call on their behalf. Ask them what the emergency is. How can they be helped? Is it medical? Is it a mental thing? A good number to have the employees know is 988. It's the nationally recognized crisis intervention line. It works like 911 for mental and substance abuse issues. Our dispatch is local. It's located at 413 Spring Street, and they can staff these things. So if someone's like, hey, I need to see, a counselor, I'm feeling suicidal, 988 should be a good number to call. Because suicidal ideations, they'll have a licensed clinical social worker on the other end of that phone, dial it for them and go from there to help them out. Things like giving people free things, again, I'm advising good boundaries. Give free things at the discretion of the business, but just know that it may become a thing. And individuals that are seeking any kind of assistance will tell other people, just set the boundaries. Okay, if it becomes a problem, and it could become a problem real quick. So just be firm on that and be fair and be polite about it. Like, hey, we can't let you use the phone. Things like bathrooms and restrooms, folks like to lock themselves in. I've seen businesses where they have a combination for it that they'll give to paying patrons. Nothing wrong with that. Or the key system. Might be inconvenient, but it could save you a disrupting business and several call outs from the PD to come in and take care of that.
When we were talking before, there are services to direct people to.
Yes.
So you mentioned the Chat Foundation,
Yeah.
the Community Kitchen. If there was a name change recently, so some
Yeah.
people may not know Chat Foundation yet. What are some of the services that they do offer at the Chat
So
Foundation?
there's the day center at the Chat Foundation at 727 East 11th Street. And if people need a shower, they need to do laundry, there's mail service, and there are phones there. And they can utilize all these things. So if somebody needs a phone, somebody needs a shower, something to eat, 727 East 11th Street at the Chat Foundation. It's no time limit. It closes about 6 or 7. And sometimes they'll have the cold weather shelter. To get the cold weather shelter, to know if it's open or not, you can actually go to the Chat Foundation website, and it will tell you if the cold weather shelter is open. Like even last night when I was doing an engagement for individuals that were out in front of businesses and stuff, we let them know, hey, cold weather shelter is open, and they moseyed on down to the cold weather shelter right when it opened. So, and they didn't know it was open at the time. So things like that could be helpful. 988 is a good resource for the mental health issues. Chat Foundation is always available during the daytime, during business hours. So hey, if they need a shower, mail, phone, there's limited social work resources on the weekend, but there is somebody there that can help them point them in the right direction.
So my final question for you, because we are in the holiday season and post-pandemic, we are seeing increases in foot traffic. And so, what are good tips or reminders for businesses and employees just to remember on a daily basis when they're going to work? Maybe they have different work hours now because of the holidays. What would be some basic tips to share with local businesses?
Well, just try to stay calm, stay regulated, and if people are having the same frustrations as you are out here during the holiday seasons, it's one of those special times of the year where we're all a little more stressed out than we should be. So be a little empathetic with your fellow human that you interact with, but also if we're in terms of safety, just know how well lit places are. If you got to take the trash out and lock up by yourself, let somebody know if you've got somebody at home waiting on you. Hey, I'm about to lock up. Text them, call them. Just let somebody know some things, especially if you're by yourself. If things seem, trust your instincts on this. Sometimes is if you feel a little unsafe, maybe locking up, don't be afraid to call the non-emergency line and say, hey, I would like an officer just to stand by while we lock up. Hey, that's what we're here for. And as per our last conversation, I'd love to just sit and prevent something to happen than the opposite and work the back end of something. So that is a service we can provide for individuals. I know we are very busy, but we want to keep everybody safe at the end of the day. So yeah, don't be afraid. Like, hey, sketchy people were outside the business earlier. I don't feel safe. Can an officer stand by while I lock up? No problem.
Yeah.
So
we talked a little bit about parking garages or parking lots. If you see lights out, what should you do to report that type of thing?
So it's a good idea to you see something that's not working properly, or if there's something with a parking garage that's not adequately lit, it's a safety issue. And things like calling code enforcement or getting a hold of the parking authority if it's one of the Republic parking, and let them know, hey, the lights are out. The visibility in those parking garages should be well lit and visible. And don't assume that there's cameras everywhere. Sometimes there's not. So it's just things like that. If you see it, say someone report it to the boss. If it's in a building that's not owned by a parking authority or something like that, just say, hey, the lights are out. We don't feel safe going to our cars. Say something. That nothing's going to change if you don't. So
yeah, and I know the Downtown Chattanooga Alliance, so they have a district downtown. They have a walk to car system that you can call their phone number to have someone come and walk with you to their car as well. I think we also touched about security systems, and there is a system that connects. You can connect to the Chattanooga Police Department. I believe it's Dragonfly. It might be converting right now, but security cameras, that could be a good option for some local businesses.
So in this day and age, having video, just surveillance, anything really changes the dynamic when we're investigating anything, whether it's shoplifting, vandalism, things of that nature. So I really advise a good surveillance system of some kind. It protects everybody involved. It'll protect your employees. I mean, I wear one every day, every time I go out, and this protects me and the citizens. So I really recommend something like that, a good alarm system, but that video surveillance of some kind, any kind, especially if you have somebody that's a repeat trespasser or somebody that has been formerly trespassed by law enforcement and they're gone right before cops get there the second, third, sixth, or the 10th time. Having that video footage can actually, hey, that's that person, we know them, and we can go secure a warrant because we have the evidence, you know.
Yeah. And then there is an app too that people can download on their phone. It's called the Atlas app, I believe. And so if you're not comfortable calling the non-emergency number, there is the app.
There's the app. You could text at Hamilton County 911. We're really, like, you could text them and they can find where you're at. And in some cases, and I haven't seen this firsthand, but they can also log into turn on your webcam or on your phone to see where you're at if something's going on. I don't know how they do that. It's a special stipulation, but I know that's an ability that our dispatch has. So.
Yeah, that's great. And then lastly, you mentioned identifying a point person on your team that if there is a confrontation, who would be the person? So say you're a front of desk person or a hostess. How should you identify who that point person would be to handle a situation?
So everywhere that I've worked, you've always got at least one or two folks that are really good with people, and you know they may be terrible at other things, but they're amazing with the gift of gab. They're real personable. Have them be your front person, somebody that can stay calm under pressure when someone's escalating the situation. If you don't have anybody like that, then really look into de-escalation training. There's a lot out there. We kind of do a little bit, and if you need me to come to your place of business to kind of give you some basic pointers on how to communicate with folks. I do it for Erlanger healthcare systems quite frequently. But yeah, find somebody that has a good way of calming people down. There's usually somebody that's got this natural gift, and some people that may have been in the customer service business for a while that just got the magic. Yeah. So yeah, it's real lean on your strengths at your team.
Right. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for joining us for Chamber Chat. It's an exciting time in Chattanooga. We are a growing city, but we do recognize that sometimes there are challenges, and the holiday season, as you mentioned, can be a stressful time for all of us, and so I appreciate your tips. I appreciate the tip of all of us can be empathetic during this season, and so River City Company, if you're in our footprint, we're here to support you. The Downtown Chattanooga Alliance, if you're in their footprint, they have additional services. And then, of course, the Chamber of Commerce is here for us all. So thank you again, and we hope you have a happy holiday.